there were two people there talking about living in flow. And the whole premise being making decisions following your intuition. So your heart over your head.
Yeah.
Right? And if it's not a hell yes, it should be an F no in everything you do in life.
Welcome back to another episode of It Takes Grit. Mr. Dash, you are my special guest today. You're pretty special to me.
I feel damn special to be on your show.
Wow. We are celebrating your book, and this is what we're going to be talking about. We have so much stuff in common, and you guys at home, make sure first of all that you subscribe to the podcast, you subscribe to the YouTube channel, because this episode, I haven't really talked about much of my kind of addictions and my past. And I thought, well, why not have somebody on the show who's kind of struggled with a few things that I have done, and we can kind of chat about it. So you guys are in for a real treat because I'm about to get pretty real, and so are you.
And I am an open book, no pun intended.
Yes, I know. So many people have asked me that recently. I'm like, I'm literally an open book. So this is the book. It is Chasing the High. It's out June 11th, 2019. It's real. I can touch it. It's got your name on it. First of all, how does this feel to look at a book that you have written and published and it's right here in your hands?
It feels crazy. I mean, I never thought I would be a writer. In fact, I hate writing. I hated it. Like, I would write emails over and over and over. I would actually send them to myself and read them just to see, if I was receiving this, how would I feel?
That's awesome.
Right? So to actually write the book, it's a great experience. And it's just, I'm thrilled that the day is here because it's been a year and a half of this endeavor. So
that's amazing. So what did you do to give the listeners some context? What did you do before? Like, who are you? Fill us in.
So I am an entrepreneur and recovering addict, and I like to say philanthropist, and many, many other things. There are many layers to this onion, okay?
I like that.
And, I grew up back east on the East Coast in New Jersey. My father was an entrepreneur. I always learned as a young boy, like, what it was to work hard. He was like first in, last out. That's all he knew. He really didn't know about working smarter. He just knew about working harder. So I followed him. I was at 10 years old. I was in the warehouse. I was working away and all this stuff. And, at that time, I was introduced to gambling by my uncle. So,
and this was a very young age, right?
11.
11 years old, introduced to gambling. Okay.
Yeah. And I made my first bet. It was up at Thanksgiving in Massachusetts with my uncle, and I won. And that was like the worst thing that could have ever happened to me because that rush I got, that high I got, I wanted more of it.
Even at 11 years old, it was like something that was embedded in you from that moment, you believe?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
100%. It was almost like, not exactly the same, but almost like closing a sale. They were very equatable to me. So I would go and work for my dad, and when I would sell on the floor, like, I would get that rush also. But he mostly had me in the warehouse, so I became friends with the warehouse guys. They all gambled. So then they started taking my bets, 12, 13, 14 years old. They started taking me down to the New Jersey Meadowlands racetrack. I would tell my dad, Eddie's going to bring me home, and he would take me 40 minutes to the racetrack, and we would bet on horses. I'm like 13 years old.
Wow, that's crazy.
And then my Little League baseball coach was a bookie also. So
you were surrounded by it. So when we talk about this a lot on the podcast, your environment really does create who you are and your future. And so this is just a perfect example of what you were surrounded by was what created what happened in the future.
Yeah,
right?
100%. 100%. What's that saying? You're
the average of the 5 people you hang around with.
There you go. Thank you.
There it is. Right at 13 years old, it's still true.
It's true,
regardless
at
of your
all
age.
times. And that's why it's so important, at different times in your life to purge. You have to purge. Like, it doesn't matter if you've been friends with somebody for 20 years.
Yes.
If they're a negative force in your life, it's the same with family, as painful as it might be. If they're not supporting you and they're a negative in your life, you have to keep your distance so you can reach your full potential. And those are some of the things I talk about in the book.
I love that too. And because, even if you're 13 years old and some of our audience are, 12, 13, all the way up to like 60, 70 years old, it's amazing. And you could be bullied by like a friend friend at school. I feel like even at school, you know somebody and they're considered your friend, but they're still negative to you. And then when you get older, maybe in the work environment, you have that person that's just, like not fueling your positive side. So what is it that you did to be able to remove yourself from situations where, you weren't being a great person of the average of the 5 people you're hanging around with?
Well, I actually was being a great person, but I was surrounded by negative people. So I was being so good at being negative because I was surrounded by these negative people.
Wow.
That I was still at the top of my game, just placing it in the wrong direction. So it was completely draining, and it was very heavy. It's very heavy. Like, I had this mentality in New York for a long time. Like, if I would walk down the street and I would see somebody walking the other way and they would make eye contact with me, like, I would think, what the hell are you looking at?
Right. Yeah. Right? Like, who are you? What do you want?
Like, what's wrong?
Yeah. What are you staring at? Yeah.
You got beef? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, something like that, versus that mentality of, hi, how are you? And just waving to them and saying hello. Like, saying hello to a stranger can make, like, the biggest shift in their day. And just smiling at them. But I never lived like that growing up, and I never lived like that after college and working in New York City. It was just work, work, work. It was all about money. It was all about possessions. It was all about a nicer suit, a nicer watch, a nicer place I'm living in, being high rise, whatever it was, having money to spend at the clubs, all of this. And that was the mentality that New York kind of breeds on you. Yeah.
And then so you were part of a company. Yeah. You built the company.
Yeah.
And what were you, because you were very successful, still obviously very successful, what extra things to make you high were you doing at the time? What was the things that you were addictive to?
Yeah. So basically, when I was working in New York City after college, but even during college, I'll tell you a quick story in college. And this is what led to a lot of things. My roommate in college got shot by a .357 Magnum, and it blew out his tricep.
Wow.
By his ex-girlfriend. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I came back from one semester, and I went into the dorm room, and there were bottles of pills just lined up. And drugs like everywhere, because he had just gotten shot. He was taking all these pills and
prescription medication.
Yeah, so he's like, hey, Michael, you want to try this? I'm like, sure. You want to try
How
this?
old are you at this time?
I was in college, so I was like, I don't know, 20.
Yeah, it's interesting because as you are about to say, my roommate did this. When I was 19, 20 years old, my roommate came in, didn't get shot, but came in and gave me Coke on a plate for the very first time.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, oh, so it's interesting that your roommate had some drugs and my roommate had some drugs, and we both decided it would be a good idea to take them.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Does your roommate know my roommate?
I don't know. It's kind of scary, right?
Yeah, let's hope not, because that would be a disaster.
They would have been a disaster together. Okay, so that's real hard. Yeah, and I've never really kind of shared that story before. On my side, so your roommate has all of these different pills, asks you if you want to try them, which is what my guy did, was like, hey, do you want to try this? Like, it was just it was like Coke on a line, and I snorted it. And for that, it was like 10 o'clock at night. And I remember being like, oh, am I going to die? Oh my God, am I going to still be alive? And then I woke up and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm alive. And I felt good.
Yeah.
Wow. So what was the first time that taking those tablets? Those pills? What did
it
do?
Pills. It was pills. It was Coke. It was steroids.
Oh,
because he was doing steroids because like he was like not as strong as he was before.
Oh, see.
I did all of that. Like, I was working out like it was my job. Not going to class, but working out. Like, I remember going home during one break and going to my local high school. And going to the gym to work out. And I was like huge. I was like jacked up.
Wow.
And people were looking at me like, what the hell? Like, does he really think this is normal? But in my mind, I had convinced myself.
Right. And also because you were
I see it every day. So, it was one of those things. So I did all of that stuff. And I basically tried almost everything except heroin and meth. Like, thank God I did not try those
I think
things.
I will concur with you on that. Yeah.
But everything else I basically tried. And, when you're an addict, it's very easy to be cross-addicted. And that's what happened to me. At some point I stopped gambling. Actually, tomorrow is my 14-year anniversary clean from gambling, and that's when I'm releasing the book.
That's why I was going to ask you. I bet there was a reason that it was June 11th. Like, I had a feeling it was. So that's 14 years of not gambling anymore.
Right, but no betting. You can't bet me that that's why I did it tomorrow.
Oh, okay. No. Yes.
That was a Freudian slip, right?
I knew
you
that was the
I
reason.
Bet you. Yeah.
Yes, I see. Wow, that's really interesting. But
I pick up every word, every bet word. It's like
it's like when you want to go and buy a new car and you know that's the car, and then you keep seeing that all the time. Yeah, I was very interested as to why you picked the 11th, and I knew that there was a meaningful reason around that date. So I'm glad that. Okay, so 14 years. Wow, so 14 years, no more gambling.
Right, and then. After I left college, and in New York City, cocaine is everywhere in New York. So I had an 8-year cocaine addiction in New York, and And
tell me about that though. Like, is that I'm doing it every day? You're doing it Friday, Saturday night? Like what?
Weekends.
Just weekends.
Weekends. I was always able, with all my addictions, to manage them outside of being very productive at my job. I was a high exceller. I was very good at sales. I've always been great at sales. That's my superpower. And I wanted to be the best at whatever company I was at. So I was kind of able to manage my gambling amongst closing deals, and my cocaine use was on the weekends. And,
right.
But I remember specific stories where I'm out at a club in New York City, and I'm with a whole bunch of friends, and we're single, and we have bottle service, and we have like a table full of girls, and I'm like telling them, hey, I got to go home. Like, I'm leaving in the middle of this party, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go meet my ex-girlfriend. And it was a complete lie, because I would go home, open the computer, and play Party Poker, which is a card game online where you could gamble and blow lines of coke alone in my apartment until the sun would come up, and then I would smoke weed so I could go to sleep. And it was like every weekend, it was just a constant cycle and battle.
So that's interesting you say that, because you were like a functioning, and I think the thing is there's the amount of Americans and people around the world that do coke and are still able to like go to work and function, because I've done that when like I've done drugs stuff at the weekend, and then you go and function. But really, are you functioning on your highest level? Like, even when you go and binge that whole weekend and you're doing the gambling, you're doing the drugs, like it's still not becoming the best version of you, and it does still affect your week. How do you feel like that affected? I mean, you say it didn't like affect your like work schedule, but how did it affect your like social life or your relationships or friendships?
I was completely disconnected.
Right.
Especially with the coke. I mean, at that time I was dating women who were into kind of the same thing. So we were kind of on the same page, which is the wrong page for you kids at home.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And it's wasted years of my life when I look back on it, because I could have been accomplishing so much more, and I could have really been tapping into what I really feel like I've been put on this earth to do, which I didn't find out till later in life.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that was terrible. When I stopped doing cocaine, there's actually an interesting story. I have interesting stories as to how I stopped some of these addictions.
Yes, please share.
So I share them in the book. But I was in New York City out with a friend, and this is after I moved out of New York. I came back to visit. He got in a fight with somebody. I went to break it up, and I got punched in the face from the side and broke my nose. And I had to go get my nose redone. And they handed me a bill. It was $10,000. And I said that day, I'm never putting another thing up this nose.
Wow.
This thing just cost me $10,000. And that was it for me. That was it for me. And I never did it again.
And that's a big wake up call. But somebody who maybe is struggling right now and hasn't had something to really wake them up, because I feel like we still feel like we can function going through our week, doing a great job, and then the weekend comes and we just like blow it all out, and we look back, and I look back at so many weekends where I wasn't able to sleep, and I'd wake up, go to be bed at like 10 a.m. in the morning, and I look back and I go, wow, like it was fun in that short moment, but like the next day it's just so not worth it, and what a waste, and I wasn't giving anything back to the world. I was just being so selfish and taking everything from myself. So have you seen anybody else, like you've had very specific like wake up calls, like literally being hit in the face and having to pay $10,000 to have your nose redone, but like have you seen anybody else like being able to like wake up? How can we share it, like wake people up?
Yeah, I think it all starts with the power of curiosity, right? You have to tap into your curiosity as you become an adult. Because what we tend to lose our curiosity. As kids, we're born into this world and we're playful and we'll go into the mud and we'll take a crayon and roll it in the mud and eat it and whatever, right? It really we'll do whatever, but because we're curious about learning what life is all about. But a lot of people tend to lose that as they get into their routine.
Yes.
Right? Routines are great, but they don't resonate with you when you grow. As you're growing with a person, the same routine you set 10 years ago is not going to resonate with you. So you have to kind of tap into that curiosity and try new things and see what resonates with you. And then you can incorporate them into your life and you can substitute them for poor behaviors that you're using or for behaviors that you wake up the next day and you're full of self-loathing. And you're just like, why did I do that last night? Again. Why do I feel like crap?
Yeah.
Because I did all that last night, and for what? I have an empty feeling that I'm left with. Well, why? Most of the time, it's because you're surrounded by people who are doing the same thing.
Yep.
Right?
Some days I've woken up the next day and I thought, I'm never, ever doing this again.
How many times have you said that? I mean, I used to say that like 20. I will never drink again.
Yeah, I'm never drinking again. I'm never doing drugs again. And like, I feel like I wanted to die. Like, you feel suicidal. Like, it's so awful. And I think it's so great when you're talking about like the changing up the routine. So what things have you done in your life where you've taken out drugs and gambling, and what have you like changed them? What have you implemented instead of that? Like, what have you taken up instead of taking out lines of coke?
Sure. Like, just before I get to that, I do want to just talk one thing on after I stopped doing cocaine, I was introduced to Adderall. And I just want to talk about Adderall for a minute because it is such a big problem in corporate world, in entrepreneurship world, and everywhere. And Adderall really, out of all those like vices, was the worst one for me because I took it every day.
Okay, so this one you were taking every day. Right?
In the office every day. And it would change who I was and how I reacted to people. I was not a good leader because I was very emotional. And I learned some key things that I learned and that are in the book are like the worst thing you could ever do is make emotional decisions. When you're at a high level of emotion, making major important decisions is the wrong time to do it.
Yeah.
Right? And it can only lead to negative consequences. And I would react to my employees when I was on Adderall. Adderall, basically, if you don't know what it is, it's like cocaine in a pill. That's basically what it feels like, right? And the feeling I would get from popping it and the blood just pumping through my veins, I would feel like I was Superman. I could fly. You know, I could do anything. I could close any side. I could do anything. My employees would be asking me questions, and I would not be coming at them from a place of mentoring them and of compassion, from a compassionate standpoint. I would come at them from a standpoint of correcting them and of like browbeating them as to how patronizing. I've explained this to you 3 times. How many times do I have to explain this to you? I mean, what are you, a rocket scientist here? You know, like demeaning. And then as soon as I said that, I would have what I call reactionary guilt. Okay? Reactionary guilt is the minute you say something or you're done saying it, you automatically feel bad about it.
Yep.
I go back into my office and then like in my head, I'm like, I have to go apologize.
Yeah.
And for the next hour to 2 hours, I'm debating in my head, how do I apologize to this person? It's the most exhausting thing on the planet. And then you leave your employees, the people that, like, you're nowhere without your employees.
Oh, yeah.
You leave them in a place of feeling bitter and unhappy and that you don't care about them.
And they don't want to work hard.
They don't want to work hard.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. The apology, it's too late at that point.
You're already a dick.
It's too late. Yeah. Already a dick. So, you know, from that standpoint, it really had the worst effect on me, had the biggest effect on me. And what got me to stop doing that is I walked into the office one day and I opened my drawer, and that's where I kept my Adderall. I just kept them in my desk drawer. Right?
Wow.
I walked in there was no Adderall left. And I started freaking out. My heart was pounding. I called up my doctor. I left them a message. They weren't in there yet.
Yeah.
Nobody called me back. It was noon. I was like, what the hell is going on? I got in my car. I drove a half hour to the doctor's office. I stood in line. There were like 5 people in front of me. It felt like forever.
Yeah.
I got up to the receptionist. I'm like, hi, I'm Michael Dash. They're like, Mr. Dash? Yeah, we got your message from early this morning. What are you doing here? We're like, jam-packed. We just haven't had a chance to call you back yet. I'm like, I have to see the doctor. You don't understand. I ran out of my Adderall prescription.
Wow.
They're like, the doctor's booked solid for 3 days. Like, he can't see you.
Yeah.
And I remember walking back to my car and feeling like anxiety, fear, panic. And I sat in my car and I like took 3 deep breaths and I realized what I had just done that whole morning and how irrational the behavior was. That I'm just showing up at the doctor a half hour out of the way without an appointment after I left a message.
Begging for Adderall.
Like, I'm like, I'm addicted. At that moment, it really clicked into me that I was addicted to Adderall. And the next 3 days, I didn't have Adderall. And I had still planned on getting it, but I didn't have it. And the interactions with my employees were so much better.
Wow.
So much more conversational. I was really leading them. They were like, wow, what happened to you? You know? And then I realized that I don't need, this is doing me a disservice, not a service. Yeah. And that's when I quit Adderall.
Wow. And do you ever do it again?
No.
Never again. So
no, this was all last year I stopped doing Adderall.
Wow. What month in last year?
What month?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. It was like before I sold the company in June. So it was like the May time.
So about a year you haven't been doing Adderall.
About a year, and it's definitely had some effects. Like my coffee intake is up. I will say, because it like gives you this energy in your body that now you don't have. But it's much healthier, and I'm able to sleep better because what I was doing is I was taking the Adderall to get up in the morning, but then I was smoking weed to come down in the morning.
Right.
So now I got rid of both of them. But what that does to your body. Yeah. You're just killing. I mean, you're Miss Fitness USA, UK, India, Miss Fitness. What other countries?
All the countries.
All the countries, yes. So you know the effects it has on the body, and it really damaged my body and my psyche. Yeah,
it really does too, because if I've ever taken drugs like years ago with Coke, like you can't train the next day. You can't work out. Like, if you don't fuel your body right, if you are taking, Adderall to wake up and then weed to cool you down, like, there's no food kind of going on. There's no nutrition. You're not feeding your body the right stuff. You can't train. You're not a productive member of society, even though that you think you are, because you've got these additives that are making you think that you are more productive when actually it's sustainable. It's not.
Right.
It's not. You might be super productive for like an hour, but if you don't take it, you could be steady and productive for like 5 hours.
Right.
And I think that's the big change. So what was the things that you started implementing in your life to substitute all the other things that you had been doing?
Yeah, great question. So I went to Bali 2.5 years ago, and it changed my life. I went to a retreat called Unconventional Life. There were 2 people there talking about living in flow. And the whole premise being making decisions following your intuition. So your heart over your head. Yeah. Right? And if it's not a hell yes, it should be an F no in everything you do in life. Yeah. And I used to sit in between those and then be convinced to do certain things, but I never really was passionate about doing them. Yeah. But that's how I lived my life. I never thought of it that way. And they went through this whole process of clearing your limiting beliefs. And you actually do, I don't know if you're familiar with tapping, EMDR, where you're moving your eyes back and forth and you're reciting things out loud. And I thought this was weird as shit. Like, I'm like, what is these weird old people? Back east, I was taught, flow, energy, astrology, any of this stuff. They're weirdos.
Kooky.
They're kooky. They're going to scam you out of money. Don't even listen to them.
Yeah, they got a screw loose. Yeah.
But I was at such a miserable place in my life. I was also in a 6-year lawsuit with my ex-business partner at the time in Bali. So I was miserable. Like, I was running a company that was running me. I was doing the Adderall every day, weed at night. Like, in this lawsuit, hundreds of thousands of dollars, which ended up being over $1 million. And I was miserable. So I'm like, I'll try it. And I tried it, and it changed my life. And they so we cleared these limiting beliefs out, and then they put positive beliefs in, and then they talked about manifestation and synchronicities, and I started seeing these things all around me, and I was actually able to start manifesting things in my future. And those words weren't in my vocabulary for the previous 30 years. I never said manifestation, ever. Yeah. Synchronicity? No, it's called coincidence.
Flow? Yeah. Like, what is all
flow?
these?
I'm like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm like, I have a friend. Her name's Flo.
Yeah.
Like,
that's about it. Yeah.
So that was the start of me starting to tap in to my curiosity.
In a different way.
In a different way, in a positive way, not in a negative way.
There's a lot of ways to tap into your curiosity, because I think as a kid, like when I was 19 and that guy gave me the Coke on a plate, I was curious, but not in a positive way.
Right.
And it's like, be curious, but in a positive way that is going to lighten your senses and give back to the world and be a positive person to be around.
Yeah, and that's gonna, really bring that energy and kind of drive to why you're here, why you're on this earth, what you want to accomplish.
Yeah.
It sounds like so cliche, and when I used to hear people say that, I'm like, yeah, whatever.
Right. But we're not here to do drugs.
No.
And do Adderall. That's not what we're here for.
Destroy our bodies.
Yes.
And, the pharmaceutical companies and everything, they don't care. They just want to pump this stuff up. So the doctors, they just prescribe it like cops prescribe tickets, right? Give tickets, right? Yeah. So really tapping into the curiosity got me to look into meditation, got me to look into breath work, got me to go to my first sound bath, which is the most incredible thing ever. Like, and got me to listen to podcasts. I'd never listened to a podcast. 2 years ago, never listened to a podcast. I didn't even know what it was. I'm like, what is this button on my phone?
Yeah, what does this do? Yeah, what's this new app thing? Yeah.
Like saying affirmations. I used to think that's a joke. Like I'm going to look at myself in a mirror and tell myself how great I am.
Like, that's stupid.
Yeah, stupid.
Yeah. Wow, it's amazing the switch that you've had.
It's so stupid until it's not. Right? And those people are so weird until you're one of them.
Yeah,
right.
It's like, I want to join this cult too. It sounds great.
And now I'm in California, right? And it took me all these years to get to California, but my life is a big irony. It's a big paradox. I always said I will never move to California. Those people are lazy out there. They don't work hard. They have this and it really comes back to being what I feel is I was brainwashed. Just like most people are. Brainwashed by the family they're raised by, brainwashed by the media they listen to, brainwashed to the people they surround themselves with. Yep. And if those people say, stay away from these type of people, that's weird, don't do that, that's not effective, then you just believe it. But then you close the door on so much opportunity out there. And that's what I've learned more than anything. If there's any advice I can give is don't close the door before you crack it open. Not everything's going to resonate with you, but go and experience it yourself versus listening to a friend who it didn't resonate with them. Because the same things that resonate with me might not resonate with you and with someone
but
and so forth.
Experiencing it yourself.
Right.
Experiencing yourself. And it's like, if all those people over there are happy and you're not, and all your friends are miserable and bitching and they're happy and you're looking at them saying, oh, I don't like what they're doing. Okay, you need to wake up. Because those people are happy and you're miserable. And to me, I see that a lot when, with a network marketing company. Yeah. And a lot of people are like, I don't want to do, I don't like what you do. I'm like, I've just retired my dad. I'm like, mum's down 42 pounds. I've got a great income. I have amazing friends and I'm super healthy. And you're like, it's like they close the door before they actually experience it themselves.
Yeah. And
I love that.
It's ingrained in us. So you have to work to get over it. Because a lot of people do have impressions about the internet marketing company. And I did too. Yeah. My friend works for one of your competitors, and when she told me, hey, try my products, I'm like, you do that? Yeah. And then I learned about it and everything. I'm like, wait, I should have been doing that, right? That would have been great. I should have been doing that, right? But So that's all goes back to positive curiosity, right? Tap into that curiosity. And then I have a chapter in the book. It's called The Habit of Habit Making, and it talks about building habits, but also recreating your habits. And as you evolve, like I was mentioned before, there's certain practices that maybe you've been doing for a while. Maybe you run every morning for 5 miles, and you don't feel like running anymore. Maybe you do yoga, or maybe you do stretching, or maybe you do burn, or maybe you do whatever.
I love that you give those habits in the book.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why the importance, and so I feel like it's important to have habits, positive habits, and then have other things that you love to do that you can interchange them with. I'm a big believer in fulfillment. I don't really believe in happiness. I believe in fulfillment, right? We all have these buckets, and we need them filled. All the buckets filled. We need the business bucket filled, the family bucket filled, relationship bucket filled, health and wellness bucket filled, the eating and diet bucket filled. And if you can fill all the environment healthy, right? And if you can fill all these buckets halfway, then you can live a fulfilled life. Yeah. And that's really what I believe.
I love that. And who is this book perfect for?
This book is perfect for any business leaders, entrepreneurs, or I'll go a little broader, anybody who might be struggling and wants to make a shift in their lifestyle and the ways that they can do it. Because if I can do it, I mean, I was miserable in my apartment, snorting coke, gambling my life away, wanting to kill myself, and I made the change. And anybody can do it, and this is a great way to start.
And how can they get the book?
They can get the book on Amazon, and they can go to chasingthehighbook.com, and it'll take you right to the site. And I look forward to getting it in as many hands as possible. And they can also find me at micheal-bash.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Like, I absolutely love that episode and so many great nuggets. Guys, make sure that you go and get this book. It can change your life, change your mindset, change your life. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you on the next episode. Bye.